Today, you will go from beginner to pro when it comes to working with Airtable and n8n, and I will show you some secret tips and hacks and tricks that you can use to maximize the efficiency of your workflows in n8n with Airtable without using any custom code or custom API calls, just to be as efficient as possible. So without further ado, let's jump into this video and let's see how we can work with n8n and Airtable. So right away you can see my screen and you can see that it's pretty empty. I have only a manual trigger. But let's go to the Airtable to get familiar with the tables that I have, so that you can either build this out yourself and follow along, or I'm also gonna add a link down below where you can download the workflow that we're gonna build out, and as well you can copy the base with the tables so you can follow along. So the first table that we have is a simple employees table. I have an employee name, employee start date, their status, and the projects associated to that employee. So the projects is probably the most interesting field because it's a linked record from the other table, which is projects. And over here we have a project name, project status, and then we can also see to which employee that project is assigned. So now, since we have the understanding of the base that I'm going to use, let's go back to n8n and start building this out. So the first thing that we actually gonna need is to set up the credentials between n8n and Airtable. So how do we do that? Well, for this, I'm gonna actually add a separate Airtable node. I'm gonna select basically any of these nodes. So let's select search records. And over here, you can already see that I have 2 credentials set up. But we're going to do this from scratch. So I'm going to select new credential, and over here you have to enter the access token. So for that, let's go back to the Airtable. Let's click on the icon of your account. So you're going to find that at the top right corner, then go to Builder Hub. And now we are in the developers mode on the personal access tokens. So over here, all we have to do is click on create new token, then create a name. So let's say Airtable Masterclass, and then we have to add scopes. So for scopes, I always add everything. So that means that I add records read, records write, and then record comments read and record comments write, because that's going to cover all of the bases and you won't have to do anything else. And then for the access to which bases and etc., I'm going to select all current and future bases in all current and future workspaces. This again, because if I create a new base and a new tables, then I'm going to immediately have access with the same access token, and I don't have to create new access tokens every time. So over here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to press create token, and I'm going to copy this over here. I'm going to go back to n8n. I'm going to paste this in, and I'm going to again rename this to Airtable Master Class, like so. And I'm going to hit save. Great, we can already see the message connections tested successfully. So I'm going to go back to the Builder Hub in Airtable. I'm going to click done. And we have, as you can see, Airtable Masterclass Access Token created. So now we can start automating Airtable with n8n. So I'm going to exit this out. And as you can see, we have the credential inserted here. And if you want to test it, if it works, you should click on the, let's say, base drop down, and there should appear the bases. In this case, for some reason, I'm having invalid permissions. That could be that it still haven't refreshed. So I'm just going to refresh this window and see if it appears. So I just refreshed and I realized that connection is still not being connected. And actually, this is a very good lesson because I haven't gave all of the scopes. So now let's go back to the Builders Hub. So again, I'm going to go into the personal access tokens. This is the Airtable Masterclass. I can click on it, and here again, I'm going to click on add scope, and I'm going to add 2 additional ones, which is schema.bases read and schema.bases write. So when I was saying that I'm going to add all of them to make it easy, I forgot to add these 2, but now let's just save changes. again, go back to Airtable. Now let's click on the drop down, and as you can see, all of the bases appear. So the issue was that I didn't have two additional scopes. Now let's start testing out what we can do with Airtable. And I'm gonna delete this node. And first things that I'm going to show you is how you can actually list out records in the Airtable. Because if we go into the Airtable itself, over here you can see there is no such node as list records, and this is actually very commonly used when you want to get, either all of the employees, either all of the invoices, or anything you store in the Airtable, but there's no such node. So there comes the first workaround with search records. So if we click on the search records, we go into the base Airtable master class, the table employees, you can see there's actually this toggle that marks return all. And this has two functionalities. You can either filter out records by formula, or you can return all. And essentially that works as listing out all of the records in the Airtable. So if I'm gonna hit test step, I actually got 4 items. So let's look at it in a table view. I got the employee Jim, Robert, Mitchell, and Sally. If I go into my Airtable, so let's just exit this out. Let's go into the Airtable master class and employees. These are all of the employees. So great, we already know how to list out all of the records from the Airtable, even though there is no such node available. So now, just to make this a bit more organized, I'm gonna rename this as list records, like so. Now, the second thing that is very useful when working with Airtable is understanding how to filter out records. And for that, we're again gonna use search records Airtable node. So I'm gonna go into search records. I'm gonna select the same Airtable masterclass base. I'm gonna select employees. And now I have an option to insert a formula by which I wanna filter out. So let's say we go back to our table, we check what kind of employees we have, and we decide on the criteria that we want to use for the filter. And in this case, let's say I want to filter out all of the available employees. So that in this case would be Robert and Mitchell. So I'm going to go back, and here you can already see an example of a filter formula that you can use. So how this would work in our case. So always when you want to filter out, you need to type in the column on which you want to filter. And it has to be in curly brackets. So I'm gonna type in 2 curly brackets. Then I'm gonna come back here. I can see that the column is status. So I'm gonna enter status here, then equal sign. And I need now to enter in the value inside quotes. So I'm gonna add single quotes. Then inside, I'm gonna type in available. And this essentially should return all of the available employees. So let's hit test step. And as you can see over here, I got returned employee Robert and Mitchell, which if we go back to Airtable, we can see that these are the 2 employees that we actually wanted to return. So great. We've managed already to do 2 advanced functions with Airtable and n8n. Now, for the sake of keeping this organized, let's rename this into filter and rename it like so. However, there is actually another way of filtering out employees with Airtable and n8n, and that's if you don't want to actually use the inside filter in filter by formula field, or if you find this confusing. So how we can do that workaround? Well, I'm gonna enable this basically route where we get all of the employees, and here we get all of the busy, available, and partially available employees. So how can we filter out now available employees is by going here, clicking on the plus sign and typing in filter. And in this case, all I have to do is drag in the status in the value 1, and then select is equal to, and here select available. and then click test step. And as you can see, I have two kept items, which is again Robert and Mitchell, and they're both available. And then I have a discarded items, which is Jim and Sally, and one of them is busy and one of them is partially available. So this is another way of filtering out records. Okay, I just saw that I misspelled this. Jesus Christ. List records, like so. So here you go. Now we've basically learned how to filter out records in two different ways and how to list all of the records without the dedicated node for that. Now let's see how we can actually update the record in the Airtable. So for that, again, I'm gonna select the filter. I'm gonna run the filter node that I have here with the status available. And let's say I have these all of available employees and I wanna change their status. Let's say I want to turn them into partially available. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to click on plus sign. I'm going to type in Airtable again, and then I'm going to select update record node. So in here, again, I just select the same base. I select the same table. Of course, when it loads, like so. And now I'm presented with an option of which values to update. So the key or the most important thing when you're updating the records, you actually have to indicate which record you want to update. And in this case, as you can see, there is an option columns to match on, and there is an option ID. So from the previous node, we're actually getting the ID of those employees. And since it's indicated that this is the column on which we're matching, then we need to drag and drop the ID into ID using to match. So this way, we're gonna update only the appropriate records in the Airtable and nothing else. So this is actually very important. Then we have an option to update the name of employee. We can update their employment start date, their status, or assign projects. So let's say in this case, all I want to update is the status. So I'm gonna remove the employee, I'm gonna remove the employee start date, and I'm gonna remove the projects. But in this case, I'm gonna set their status to partially available. So if we go back to the Airtable, you can see that they are still available because I haven't ran that. But if I click test step, what's gonna happen is that the status now is partially available. And if we go to the Airtable, you can see both of them were just updated to partially available. And since these were the records that we filter out as available, now we have them partially available. So let me just go back and maybe set this to available, like so. But pretty much now we've learned an additional way to use Airtable with n8n. But now I want to show you how you can build advanced or really advanced workflows with n8n and Airtable, and that includes actually linking projects to employees, marking projects as done or in progress, and basically creating like a project management system, CRM, lead qualification system, and many things more you can actually do with this. So now we're gonna build an advanced workflow with the Airtable, and I'm gonna show you how you can actually link those records in n8n and have that appear in the Airtable. So now what I'm gonna do, let's start everything from scratch. So here I'm just gonna unlink these so we wouldn't be bothered by this. And we're gonna start building a bit more advanced workflow. So in this workflow, I wanna start, what do I wanna do? So I wanna get all of the available employees. Then what I wanna do is I want to assign all of the projects that are marked as to do and not assigned to anyone to each of those employees. And then I want to change their status as busy. And then in the project, I want to change the status of project as in progress. So this way, we're going to learn how we can actually link the records and how we can think through the whole logic and how everything works behind the scenes when we have a fully working system. So let's go back into the Airtable, and for this, I'm gonna again use a filter or option. So what I need is in Airtable, let's select search records. Again, I'm gonna select the same base. I'm gonna select the same table employees. And over here, again, I'm gonna select status in the curly brackets equal single quotes and then available. Okay, I'm gonna test the step and I get 2 of the employees, Robert and Mitchell. Now, another thing we're gonna add is a loop. So a loop is pretty useful thing. So basically how this loop is gonna work is that right now we're receiving 2 employees, and this loop is gonna take in employee one by one and assign the correct, or at least project that is currently empty and not taken by anyone. So how do we do that? Well, the first thing we need to do is to replace this thing. So I'm gonna add another Airtable node, type it in like so, and I'm gonna search again records, but this time instead searching for employees, we're gonna search for projects. So let's go into the projects, and again I'm gonna leave the return on selected, but now let's see which projects we actually want to return. So in this case, I want to return projects that have a status to do and doesn't have anything assigned as an employee. So let's go back here. And here, the first thing that, again, I'm going to type in curly brackets, status equal, and to do, like so. Let's test this step, and we're getting the 2 projects. However, let's say if we had the project to do, but we had an employee assigned, let's say Sally, and we tested this step, we still would have 2 items returned, even though we actually wanted to return those projects that don't have any of the employees. So then, again, I'm gonna leave actually Sally over here to show you how this works. But what I'm gonna do is, after to do, I'm gonna add comma, and then I'm gonna type in not, then regular brackets, and in here, type in curly brackets, and now type in the value employees. So for example here, employees, and that means that essentially there are 2 conditions. One, where status is equal to do, and not employees means where nothing is assigned, or essentially the field is empty. And over here, I have to wrap this in another condition, which is called and. So again, regular brackets around these 2, and then at the beginning I type in and. Now let's test this step, and as you can see, we've got only Pipedrive website technical analysis returned, because this is the only record that is to do and it doesn't have any employees assigned. So that's great. But now let's unassign Sally, so we would have 2 of the records returned. Let's test this step, and as you can see, I have both projects returned: Nike keyword research and Pipedrive website technical analysis, both as to do. So how do we now assign these to each separate employees? Well, for this, I'm actually going to use another node called limit. What limit does, it actually filter out only one of the items. So in this case, we're running a loop, and that loop takes in one of the items. Then it fetches the projects, which we can actually rename. We can search projects like so. It gets the projects, and then we only want to assign one project for one employee. That's why I'm using limit, and in here the value is set as max items 1. So for example, I run this one, and it passes on only one of the items. And now we want to assign one of the projects to the current employee. So here, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna type in Airtable, and I'm gonna look for update record. So here, I'm gonna rename this to assign project to employee. and rename it like so. For the base, again, let's select Airtable Masterclass. Then we're actually going to be updating the employees. And again, we need to select which ID to match. So important that we actually want to update the employee and not the project. That's why we're going to select loop over items and pick an ID from here. Then we don't really want to update the name of the employee. We don't want to update the employee start date, and we actually do want to update the status. So we're, let's say, select gonna partially available, and now we want to link the project to the employee. So typically what people do, and what I used to do, is that I would take in the project ID from the limit, drag it in here, and we're thinking, great, we're gonna link the record ID from project to the employee. But unfortunately, that's not gonna work. For example, if I click test step, I'm gonna get an error, invalid input for project. Project expects an array, but we got just an ID. So how do we find a workaround for that? And this is actually very important. And as long as I have been working with n8n and Airtable, this has been the most useful thing. So when you go into the projects where we dragged the ID, we actually have to type in like square brackets. I don't know how they're called in English, like so. And as you can see, it turns that ID into an array. So for example, if I hit test step right now, it successfully ran, and we've actually assigned for Robert a project. So if we go in here into employees, you can see that Robert right now is partially available, and it has a Pipedrive website technical analysis project assigned. Okay, that's actually great. Now, how do we want to actually mark that that project has been assigned? Or actually it is, because we actually want to mark it as in progress if it's assigned. So let's go back and now add additional node. Again, this is going to be Airtable, and it's going to be update record. Then we're going to select Airtable Masterclass, and in this case, projects table. So here we're limiting the project. So the ID to match on, I'm going to select from limit. For the name, I don't want to change anything. For the employees, I don't want to change anything. For the status, I actually want to mark it as in progress because it just has been assigned to an employee. So for example, if we go into the projects, I can see we have it set as to do for Pipedrive. So I'm just gonna run test step. And if we go back, you can see that it turned to in progress. So now we've essentially built out this whole workflow. So maybe let's rename this update project status, like so. And we have an advanced workflow. So let's see in action how it would work from scratch. So here I'm going to select as to do. I'm going to unassign the employee, and I'm going to mark Robert as fully available. So now we have two employees that are fully available. We have two projects that are currently unassigned and with status to do. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to zoom out and I'm going to click test workflow. So essentially what this should do is should assign separate projects to separate employees without duplicating that, and then updating the statuses accordingly. So now if I go into the employees table, I can see that right now Robert is partially available and he has a Pipedrive website technical analysis project assigned, and Mitchell is also partially available and he has a Nike keyword research project assigned. And if we go into project, you can see that we have all of the projects, all of them are in status, and all of them have responsible employees assigned. So this is how you can start building really advanced workflows with n8n and Airtable. And if you enjoyed watching this video, there's actually a link to my newsletter where you can subscribe and follow me for more tips and tricks in the newsletter. I actually share more advanced workflows on there completely for free, which are usually paid on Gumroad. And also, as I mentioned, you're gonna be able to download this particular workflow from the Gumroad in the link down below. So I hope you liked the video. If you did, don't forget to like the video, don't forget to subscribe, and I hope to see you in the next one.